Hey everyone, welcome to Athena SQL Lab, where we, deep dive into the world of SQL Server and database administration. If you are just a DBA or a person who's passionate about SQL Server, I believe you have come to the right place. Today, we'll be discussing about a very critical topic about automating SQL Server login synchronization in always-on availability groups with the dbatools PowerShell module. As a DBA, if you have ever wondered why logins in always on availability group don't magically synchronize across replicas in your environment, or you are frustrated with application failures or login failures, after availability group failover and the applications fail to connect to the database, I believe this video is for you. In this short video, I'll try to explain some of the challenges of managing logins in always on availability group environment. I'll share with you some of the best practices, which is how you can synchronize it, and show you a demo how you can synchronize the logins and have a stable availability group environment. Stay tuned. We'll start with a very short PowerPoint presentation here. Now, but they said the challenge is these logins in availability group replicas, they are not synchronized from the primary to the one or more secondaries. They are not, there's no native way of synchronizing at this up to now. So that's a challenge, right? And so DBAs are required to manually synchronize these logins in most cases, which is error prone and time consuming. And because of it, and when there are if the logins are not synchronized or if they are not properly synchronized because of mismatch between the login seed for especially for SQL logins and also the database user seed, then you have also applications failing to log in and causing an outage, right? So that's the the not good side of it. So uh, for this demonstration that I'm going to be showing you with the PowerShell script that I will be using, there are a few requirements. One is which is the dbatools PowerShell module needs to be installed on the server where you will be running the PowerShell module, the PowerShell script, because the PowerShell script uses the dbatools PowerShell module as well as the SQL Server PowerShell module. So you need to install the dbatools PowerShell module, and you also need to install the SQL Server PowerShell module. Now, if your server has access to the internet, you can use these two commands and directly install from there. There are situations which I've observed enabling TLS 1.2 is required to directly connect to the repos of these modules and then install it on the server. The third point is the user that will be running the PowerShell script needs to have sufficient permissions on the primary as well as the list of secondary replicas to be able to copy the logins from the primary to those secondary replica instances. You also need to provide to the PowerShell script the list of availability group listeners. We use the listeners because we like just to dynamically get the primary replica as well as the list of secondary replicas. Now, documentation wise, this PowerShell module is an open source tool, so you can find it on dbatools.io download. So you have a number of methods on how you can install the PowerShell module on the server that will be running the PowerShell script. And all of my um, PowerShell scripts, the PowerShell scripts that I will be using for this demo are also available in my GitHub repo. It's github.com/israelmichael. And if you go to the SQL-login sync AG repo, so you'll find three PowerShell scripts. One is a script to install the SQL Server module. Another one is to install the dbatools PowerShell module. And the last one is the main script that will help you synchronize the logins. Now, so as I said, right, so this is the documentation. The main part of this the dbatools PowerShell module is a command, the copy-DbaLogin command, right? And that's also available here, and the detailed documentation about it. And there are different options here. The source is where you provide the source instance, the destination instance, and if you want to provide one or more logins, or if you want to exclude certain logins, you can provide the login names here. And if you want to exclude certain system logins, you can enable that one. If you use the force option, which means that it will drop the login if it exists on the secondary and copy over the login from the primary. And the other one is the exclude permission sync. This talks about the server level permissions. So if you issue this option, which means that if you enable or include this option, which means that it will skip the server level permissions on the secondary. So the server level permissions will not be copied over to the secondary. And this documentation has a lot of examples and just definitions and etc. So I'll let I'll give the chance to go through it and have a better understanding of it. So having said this one, we just deep dive into the demo, and we'll start from there. Now, one thing that I mentioned earlier is one of the challenges, right? One of the challenges with always an availability group login synchronization, right, is manual intervention is error prone, right? So the reason being, DBAs most of the times they may be able to properly synchronize the logins, but at times they get distracted and they forget. Either they don't correctly replicate and synchronize it, or they even kind of totally forget the logins to be created on the secondary. So in those situations when failover happens, applications fail to connect, and that's an outage, right? Now I'm going to give you a description of what my environment looks like. So I have one always on availability group environment set up with a failover cluster that contains three nodes: LabSQL 10, LabSQL 13, and LabSQL 16. These are SQL Server 2022 developer editions. And I have also another cluster with LabSQL 1 and LabSQL 2 with one availability group. These are SQL Server Standard Editions 2019. Now, so if you look at the LabSQL 10, you'd see that I have two availability groups. And in the first AG, I have LSN SQL 01 and the second one, LSN SQL 02. I'm going to be using the LSN SQL 01, and I'll be focusing also the RDS registration database. The main reason being, I have a very simple WinForm application that I will use to demonstrate how not properly synchronizing the logins on the secondary, um, you know, cause an outage. Okay, so now the login that we'll be using for this purpose is the RDS app. This RDS underscore app is the login that we'll be using, and it has a DB owner permission on the RDS registration database. Now, if this is the RDS registration application, it's a WinForm application, and I'm going to show you that the connection string information has the listener name, the database name, and the username and the password. Okay, so I will type the username and the password, And let's see if if we're able to log in. Now we're able to log in, right? And I'm going to pull some data out. Okay. Now, as you can see, I'm able to pull the data out, right? Now, I'll clear this one and we'll go back, okay? So, if you look at SQL 13, which is the secondary replica, now you can see that the RDS app is there, right? I'm going to delete this RDS app, and then rather than copying the login from SQL 10, I will just create it from SQL 30 on SQL 30. The password is the same, but I will create it directly. Okay, so I created it, and now if I go back and run this query on SQL 13, try to compare the login seed and the user seed, you can see that it said they're not the same. The reason being, this user seed comes from the primary replica seed, right? The SQL login seeds are localized. They are unique to each SQL server. That's why we need to kind of migrate the seed, not not create a new login directly. So if I go to SQL 10, right, and run it, you could see that they're the same. The login seed, right, and the user seed are the same. So now what I'm going to try is try to load, close this one and open the app. And yeah, let's do a failover, right? We need to failover and test if my application works. Because now there is a seed mismatch, right? I said the login is exactly the same. The only difference is the seed. Now we can test that, okay, by connecting to SQL 13, SQL authentication, RDS up. Okay, as you can see, we're able to log in and see some of the server level information. The only problem, as I said, is we did not create the same thing with SQL 10, right? If you look at SQL 10, you can use the same password and you're able to connect. So, okay. This proves that the password that we are using is the same. The only difference is the seeds are not the same. Okay. So we are on SQL. Let's go again on SQL 13. We can use that Windows authentication. Now run it. You see that they're not the same. Yes. So we have failover the availability group. SQL 1 is now primary on SQL 13. Let's try to connect. Okay. Now it's taking time, right? As you can see before, it just instantly logged in, but now it's taking time. Now you can see that it can now open the database as requested by the login. The login has failed. That's the expected behavior because of that seed mismatch, right? So that's fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'll just go ahead and drop this login, okay, on SQL 13. And so, all right, so it's telling me could not drop login. Oh, sorry, yes, because it's logged in, and I need to find out where that login is and kill that session. Okay, select all phone. All right, so let's find it where. We need to find that one. All right, I need to keep these 4 sessions. Okay. All right, so let's go and delete it. All right, now we're able to delete the login, right? So, and the right way to um, copy over a SQL login is using what we call the SQL login stop procedure that you find it on the Microsoft site. So here is the, you know, the page on how you can use the SQL login. It says transfer logins and passwords between SQL Server instances. You have the stop procedure available here. You can copy and run it on the master's database. So I will run this one on the primary replica, right? And what you need is just grab the generator script and copy it over and open in a query window. So you can see that the seed is a binary and the hashed password. And now I will run this one, right? And then I will just go and see if the seeds are the same now. Okay. As you can see, the seeds are the same because I migrated the seed and from the SQL 10 to SQL 13. And now let's test if I'm able to connect. Yep, you can see that I'm able to connect. Okay, so let's do it again. If we're able to populate, you can see that we're able to read the data, right? So that's one part, right? So you have to use the SAP Help Brief login if you want to correctly migrate the CD from the primary to each secondary, right? If you want to manually do it, this is the right way to do it. But what I'm going to show you is using PowerShell, the dbatools PowerShell module, and the Copy-DbaLogin command. Now for this one, I'm going to fill back again, okay? I'm going to fill back the AG. All right, so we'll do the failover. Okay. Now once the failover is completed, so we'll see how many logins we have here, right? You can see a number of SQL logins and then Windows logins. And on SQL 13, we still have more. And I'm going to go ahead and delete these logins here. Okay. And I'm also going to delete this RDS app again. And then I will be deleting this login. Okay. I will do the same thing on SQL 16. All right. So deleting again. Okay. And the same thing on, if you look at SQL 1, SQL 1 has, yeah, let's say SQL 1 to 3 logins. And let's do on SQL 2. Okay. All right. Now we have deleted a bunch of SQL logins from the secondary replicas, right? So let's go and see what this PowerShell script is all about. Now, the first step is to provide the list of availability group listeners. So now I have two listeners here, one for each cluster, right? So availability group listener, LSN 1 and LSN lab SQL 1. Now, what this thing does is by passing each listener, right, that we're using the for each listener, we query the master database to get the primary replica and the list of secondary replicas. And you get the primary replica in the list of secondary, one or more secondary replicas, right? Now, another step here, what I'm doing here is uh, querying only SQL logins. SQL logins and excluding, system logins and excluding all those SQL logins with sysadmin roles. Okay. If you have a sysadmin role SQL login on the primary, and also if it exists on one or more of the secondaries, since the sysadmin role has the highest permission, there is no need to, to kind of, so what I'm going to do here is like, if the seeds are different, then I'm going to drop and create again. So there's no need to drop if that login has a sysadmin role. This is for non-sysadmin role logins only. So I get the list of SQL logins after filtering, right? And then what I'm trying to do is get the name of the login and get the seed. But because the seed is not human friendly, it's a binary, I'm transforming it into a checksum, which turns to be an integer, which is very easy to understand, right? So I get the name and I get the transformed checksummed seed. Okay. So that's for the primary and for the secondary. So this one gets the primary, right? The primary checksum, and this one gets the secondary checksum for the same login. Now, if the login is not null, which means that if the login exists on the secondary, right, I would like to compare the the checksum seed of the primary with the checksum seed of the secondary. If they are not the same, then what I'm going to do is do a Copy-DbaLogin. I provide the source and the destination. I provide the login name, and I use the force, which is a key here, right? Because I'm using the force, what I'm trying to do is drop the login on the secondary and create it with a new seed from the primary. Okay, that's what it's going to do. Now it uses a try-catch method, which is very good for error handling. Now the last part is for anything else, whether it is a SQL login or a not SQL login. I don't have is a force, so there's no force here. Remember, okay, we're not forcing here, which means that it will check this part does the same thing, the Copy-DbaLogin source destination, and for each secondary instance, okay, for each secondary instance, if the login exists on the secondary, it will skip it, okay, but if the login doesn't exist, it will create it with the necessary server level permission. Let's say if that login is a sysadmin, then it will also be a sysadmin on the secondary. That will be copied over. But if the login exists, nothing is to be done. Okay, so there is no force here, but there is force here. The exclude system login part is just to exclude if system logins um, are there on the primary. So even if you don't do it, because it will just do it by default. So that's what it is, right? Let's go and run this PowerShell script, because I already deleted a bunch of logins on the SQL 13, SQL 16, and Lab SQL 2. So we'll see if these logins are generated or copied over. Okay. Now this is like 2 listeners and then three secondary replicas, right? 2 for the first one and 1 for the second one. So you can see that it says whatever says successful means that these are copied over. Okay, these are copied over and these are copied over. And you can see that skipped either because they are on local machine or they exist on the destination. Now let's go and refresh SQL 13 security folder. Okay, you can see that the login has been replicated. I also deleted the RDS app. You can see that here also on SQL 16, same thing. And you can also see here on Lab SQL 2, right? Now I'll try. So, well, I'm not going to fail over again, but let's go and see what we have on, I believe this, oh, this is SQL 16, right? So the same thing on SQL 16 and SQL 13. Okay, I just want to see what mapping we have here. Okay, as you can see, it's a DB owner. Because the seed matches, then you see that the permission is also there, which means that the correct seed has been replicated. Now, the last part here is now we have proved that the PowerShell script works, right? And the next part is making sure that the PowerShell script is part of the automated process, which is using the SQL Server agent job. Yeah. Now, I have created this job called SQL login sync always on AG, right? And there are a number of ways you can handle SQL Server jobs in an always on environment through a job orchestrator or you know through a first job to double check to check um, if the job that's running is on the primary or on the secondary. But the actual job step is this one, right? So I'm copying it. The text of the command here is a PowerShell. Sorry, I got the wrong one. I think I was supposed to copy. Okay, so you can look at it says it's PowerShell, and then you issue where the file path is. Okay, now the file path is where that file is. You can put the file wherever you want. Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be on the C drive. It could be anywhere. Now, once you have the file path, you type has to be command exec, and then make sure that the either the SQL Server agent or any other proxy account that will be running this PowerShell script has the necessary permissions to connect to each listener primary instance and also the secondary instance and be able to do the work, right? So that's really an important part of the task here. And I would say schedule it once a day, right? To run once a day, and that should be sufficient. Now, so we're going to try again with the job. What I'm going to do again is just delete, for example, from lab SQL 13. Let's delete this, the logins, the ones that we deleted, right? And let's see if um, the job, right? If the job is able to replicate this, just like the way we did with the PowerShell in the console. Okay, go. So we deleted it from where? From SQL 13, right? So you have these ones, and let's wait and see. All right. So, okay, now we had this issue earlier, so I'm gonna go ahead and see what it's saying. Um, it's saying that some SQL error, which I don't know what's going on here. It says fail an exceptional command. Okay, I think that is maybe the PowerShell script was holding it again. So I'll do it again. Maybe there was some lock in here. Let's disconnect and connect again. SQL 13. And I'm going to, no, SQL 13, sorry. Okay, SQL 10, right? Let's do SQL 10. It's kind of weird behavior I'm saying on my lab, but the PowerShell script worked fine, so everything should work fine. Start the job. Let's see. I don't know how long, maybe it took like 50 seconds or something before, 25 seconds. So that's not bad. All right, so it's done. Now let's go to SQL 13 and see if the logins have been replicated. All right, so there's something with the SQL agent job that's not making me do it. I would have to look again, see where is the script. I don't know, a permission problem here. Okay, so we don't have a problem here. And we know that the primary is also here. I want to see what kind of exception occurred. We don't know. Let me see if the SQL Server agent has all the permission that it needs to do the work. I think that's the most important part here on Lab SQL 13. The agent should be this admin, right? Okay, let's make this one an admin. Maybe that did not happen. All right, let's do it again. Okay, let's see what the SQL Server agent permission is here. Okay, this is sysadmin, but that's admin there. Yeah, this could be the issue. All right, go ahead. So once this runs, if this really a permission issue, then this proves my second point that the necessary permission needs to be given to the account so that it is able to replicate the logins from the primary to the secondary. I hope that's the case because as you can see, the agent didn't have the permission that's required. In this case, sysadmin role. Okay, let's see it. Yep, as you can see here. So now the logins have been created. If you can go ahead and see the RDS up, it needs to have the DB owner role, which is what's in the primary. So permission was a problem here, prevented us to do the automation, but now that has been resolved. So that's all I have for now. This wraps up our session on the SQL Server login synchronization in always on availability group. I hope that this video you find it very helpful and have a clear understanding of how to keep your logins in sync on always on availability group. With the techniques and the tips I shared with you today, you should be able to successfully synchronize logins in your environment. And if you really enjoy this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Athena SQL Lab. Your support helps me bring more valuable content like this. And I'd say if you have some questions or challenges or topic that you'd like me to cover in the future, you can drop them in the comment section, which I would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.